Welcome everybody to the Why Estate Planning is Essential live internet presentation. I'm going to be your presenter today. My name is Victor Medina. We're going to give everybody a second to log on and make sure that we've got everybody on board, and then we will get started. So it's right at 4 o'clock. Let's just give it a couple more minutes for everyone to log on, and we will get started. Excellent. We're seeing the numbers start to get on board. So I do want to honor the people that have started with us right on time, and we're going to get started with the presentation for today. But I did want to let you know that if you are watching this in YouTube, if you want to, you can switch to a high resolution presentation. Use the little gearbox on the bottom and select best video quality. It's all the graphics are going to look their best kind of going forward. So let's jump into the presentation for today. I want to talk a little bit about myself briefly as the presenter. So my name is Victor Medina, and I am the founder of the Medina Law Group. Medina Law Group is an estate planning and elder law firm that is located in Pennington, New Jersey, though we do work for people all over New Jersey and all over Pennsylvania. One of the things that makes us unique in this space is that I'm also a certified financial planner. So it's one place where you can do all of your retirement planning with one phone call at one shop. So we work with both legal and financial retirement planning, and it is something that many of our clients enjoy. So in terms of today's presentation, one of the things that we're going to give you the opportunity to do is schedule a 15-minute complimentary welcome call, and that is the opportunity to meet with somebody on our staff and talk about your specific concerns. If you're interested in doing that, this is the link that puts you in touch with our client Director of Business and Client Strategy. Her name is Susan. So you may want to write that down, or we can put it into the chat box for you to click. It's a really easy phone call to get to know us and just be able to start a conversation around estate planning. Hopefully what we're able to do in today's presentation, which should last between 25 and 30 minutes, is go over all of the important topics around estate planning for you to know whether or not you've got a great estate plan or whether you want to figure out more information about that. But if you're interested in taking the next step, writing down this web address, which is medinalawgroup.as.me/Susan, will bring you to a page where you can select among many times that are available a 15-minute call with Susan on our staff and begin that process. Anyone that schedules one of these calls will get a complimentary copy of one of the 5 books that I've authored in legal and retirement planning. So that's our goal for today, is get you interested in one of those consultations. So let's jump in with the presentation today. So why is estate planning essential? I tell you, it's an interesting question to have. As we get older, we understand that many of the things that we've been putting off in terms of becoming adults, well, now starts to visit us. We get a little bit more knowledgeable of our mortality, and it's time to put a plan in place. We've escaped death so far. We've escaped incapacity, but we know that it may not be forever. And so it becomes essential, in these times, especially in and around COVID, knowing that we're very much on the knife's edge of getting sick one day or something happening to us. And it's difficult to live with the idea that you might not have everything in order, because most people are really concerned about making things easier for the people that may come and help them afterwards. If you've got kids, those are going to be the people that are going to be helping you. If you've got a spouse, that's going to be the person that's going to help you. And so the goal here is to make sure that we understand why we want to get estate planning done and what makes great estate planning. And so in order to be able to do that, I want to walk through a couple of client stories, and you may see yourself in these clients depending on where you are in life. Now, I want to introduce you to Richard and Pam. And Richard and Pam were clients of mine. Of course, names changed to protect the innocent. But they were clients of mine that essentially had always been high school sweethearts. They were people that grew up in the same town, it's a working class neighborhood, did a really good thing in life, worked super hard, saved a bunch of money. They were ready for retirement. But as they came to meet me, they were largely concerned that they didn't have their ducks in a row. And part of the reason that they knew about this is they had one of their parents pass away suddenly. And then there was a big fight around the money and making sure that everything had gone smoothly. It didn't. And what they wanted to make sure is that it wasn't something that would visit on their kids' heads. They wanted to make sure that no matter what happened to them, they had the smoothest transition, and we were able to identify some additional reasons to do planning for them. Now, what they were looking to do, and this is a common phrase in our firm, is they wanted to get their ducks in a row. They wanted to make sure that no matter what would happen, they would have the right result. If one of them became incapacitated, that the other spouse could manage the money. When they passed away, that their kids would be able to get it. So their goal was really about getting peace of mind, understanding that they had the right documents in place. And in order to do that, we wanted to go over a couple of different things that they should have been focusing on. Because part of what their problem was is that their life had become this junk drawer of different documents and different planning ideas. They had gotten a will back when their kids were really young, and then they got a power of attorney sometime later after that, and their healthcare directive was something they took out when one of them went in for a routine procedure. But nobody had put together what was essentially an entire plan in and around it that looked at everything holistically from start to finish. There wasn't anybody that had taken a look at their entire situation and put together something that would take care of absolutely everything. So we wanted to go over a couple of ideas that we thought that was important about making a great plan. And one of them was to avoid a guardianship. Now, a guardianship, most people have no experience with, and it's really the thing that happens when you have a poor power of attorney or no power of attorney. Now, most people think that if they just draft a power of attorney, then they're okay and they won't need anything else. But in fact, that power of attorney is a document that only gets identified or evaluated once somebody becomes incapacitated. And what that means is that you don't know ahead of time whether or not it's going to be accepted. And there are a lot of provisions that will determine whether or not it's going to be accepted, like whether there are gifting provisions in there or the date that it was signed. And so when you look at a power of attorney, your whole goal in getting that document is to make sure that it is useful when you become incapacitated, because the alternative is to go through a guardianship. And a guardianship is a mini lawsuit where the person who's trying to help you with your affairs has to take you to court in order to get powers over you in order to manage your affairs. So most people want to avoid that, and the right way to do that is to have a comprehensive power of attorney, one that is many pages long with many different provisions in there. And by the way, I'll give you a free legal tip, which is that if you already have a power of attorney, one of the things you can do is essentially field test that, meaning you can go and take it to the financial institutions and tell them, hey, let's play make-believe. Make-believe I'm incapacitated. Would you honor this document? Because the time to figure out whether or not you have a working power of attorney is before you need it, before you become incapacitated, and while you still have time to sign a new one. You know, the other thing that people are looking to do with their estate plan is to make sure they have a streamlined estate administration and or possibly avoid probate. And probate is when you use the government system to be able to transfer assets. Now, we have some solutions around that, but I want to help present some of the problems that might occur when you don't have a comprehensive plan. Now, I actually had a friend of mine over the weekend, true story, coming into this webinar, contact me because he had a family member who passed away owning several different annuities. And 2 of those annuities had beneficiaries that were named, and one of them had the estate that was named as a beneficiary. And the net result of that, by the way, reason why that was important was because it was going to end up costing them a lot more in taxes and forcing them to go through probate for one of those annuities, even though the other 2 had properly been set up. So what my friend had was a situation, by the way, his friend is in a jurisdiction that I don't practice, which is why he didn't hire me as an estate planning attorney. But what he had was a situation where he was going to have to spend a lot more money and get a negative tax result because he hadn't done proper estate planning in the first place. So in New Jersey, one of the things that we still have as a law is an inheritance tax. Now, most people actually won't pay the inheritance tax. If you just leave money to your kids or your grandkids, there'll be no inheritance tax that's due. However, the state of New Jersey doesn't know who you're leaving money to when you pass away, and so it has a rule that says that all of the banks in your life have to freeze the assets when you die. And the only way to release those assets is after you file an inheritance tax return or you file special papers to release it. Well, there's one way to escape having those assets frozen, and that's if you use a revocable or revocable living trust. It's actually the basis of the majority of planning that we do, because when we explain to clients that the easiest way to have their family help them manage their affairs when they die is to use a trust, then it becomes something that they grab onto, saying that they absolutely want. Now, before you get ahead of yourself, a lot of people are worried about putting a trust in place because they believe that it is a document that's only for rich people. Most people think of trust fund babies as being what are needed with a trust, but it couldn't be further from the truth. You know, most of our clients do not have a minimum asset level when they put a trust in place. They apply one particular test and one test only to decide whether or not to use a trust. And that test is, would it make life easier for the people that they leave behind, either while they're doing the estate administration or by protecting assets after they're gone? When the answer in most cases clearly comes back as yes, then it turns out that using a trust is the best thing that we can do to put their affairs in order. So if you would like to avoid making life difficult for the people that you leave behind, then one of the things that you should consider is creating a revocable living trust and not just relying on a will. But by the way, we still use wills in our planning. They are the belt and suspenders to the plan. They make sure that nothing falls out or nothing escapes the planning. They are the safety net that carries everything together. But we do want to make sure that we use the trust as the foundation for that planning. Now, let's talk a little bit about a couple other reasons that people would put a great plan in place. And one of them has to do with divorce and creditor protection. And so what we're thinking about in that situation is we want to make sure that the money that we leave behind to your daughter, for instance, doesn't go to that no good son-in-law that's just going to run away with it or marry somebody after your daughter dies and be spending your money. And so what we want to do is we want to embed that with some asset protection for the kids. We want to make sure that if they're going to marry, they marry for love and not just for money. The other thing that we want to do is we want to think about inheritance protection, and that comes in a couple of different forms. One of the forms that it comes in is making sure that the assets you leave behind are protected from creditors. Like if your daughter hits a school bus, we don't want a judge to be giving away your inheritance as part of the settlement. However, there are other reasons why you want to consider inheritance protection. For example, most of our clients want to make sure that they have things follow a bloodline to make sure that they are not leaving money to somebody that's not inside of the family. And that's planning that you can do by putting trust in place with certain provisions. And then finally, one of the things that people want to make sure that they do is they want to make sure that their plan is set up for easy updating. And the way that you do that is to make sure that you have thought ahead on your planning so that you don't just draft the same documents brand new over and over again. And so the whole idea behind Richard and Pam is that they wanted to be able to follow a process that we have designed in our firm to make sure that we catch everything that you need in a plan, that it's not just a set of documents where we've copied your name and pasted it wherever the last person's name was, but that we think about you as a total human being, as a couple, as a family who's there to make sure that all of the parts, all of the pieces of the chessboard are set up the right way. And the only way to do that is to go through a process to make sure that we have taken care of every detail that is necessary for your planning. By the way, one of the tools that we use in this process is we create a particular plan around that. We believe, and it is especially important, given our background as financial advisors and lawyers, to make sure that we look at your total situation. It is the opportunity to get a second look and a second opinion on what you've been doing with your retirement planning. We believe that everybody should put one of these plans in place where we review each of your income, investment, tax, and estate planning and look at the entire picture before we move forward with a plan, before we draft any documents, because we need to understand absolutely everything about what's going on. Otherwise, we just could be giving you some forms, and those forms may not work when you need it. So the plan is especially important to making sure that we have gotten everything right. And by the way, it is something that we offer as a part of a consultation in our process. So again, if you're interested in exploring that, the web address for that is medinalawgroup.as.me/Susan, and that will bring you onto our site that you can select a free 15-minute consultation, which, as I've already promised you, will also give you the opportunity to get a free copy of one of the 5 books that I've published. It's up to you which one you want, whether you want the estate planning one, the asset protection one, the one about empowering women in retirement. Entirely your choice. You let us know, and that is our gift to you in thanks for scheduling the appointment. Now, the other thing that we want to talk about is what happens at the end of the process. And so in Richard and Pam's situation, what had happened was having gone through the entire process, they arrived at the end with a binder full of documents, a review of their retirement plan, instructions for how their assets were going to go in coordination with their estate planning documents, but most importantly, they came away with complete peace of mind that their affairs were in order. It didn't matter what was going to be coming up next along the way. It didn't matter if one of them got sick or when one of them passed away. They were resting easy at night, knowing that they had put a comprehensive plan in place that was going to help them for the rest of their days. And just as importantly, they had begun a relationship with a law firm that would be able to be a partner with them through the rest of their days. And that's one of the things that we pride ourselves on. People who are clients of ours universally say to us in their testimonials and reviews that they feel as though they were treated like their own family. Like we thought of them as their own family. And that's a good thing to have as you get on in life, because life is going to change. It's going to come at you different ways, and it's going to deal you something that you may not have expected. And what you want is a partner that you can just pick up the phone and reach out and get the right answer to your question so that you can go on and deal with whatever it is going on in your life. Now, there is another kind of client that we help, and that client is going to be use an example by somebody like Kathy and Joe. And in Kathy and Joe's situation, what we have is people who had been largely married as a second marriage in life. Now, in the second marriage in life, what had happened was Joe was actually a little bit older than Kathy. And by a little bit, I actually mean that he was about 10 years older than him. And one of the things that had happened was that Joe's mom had suffered from Alzheimer's, and that's how we met them. We ended up meeting them because we had done planning first for Joe's family. But what Joe told me is that the last thing that he wanted was to go through the same thing that his mom had. And in fact, there were a lot of markers that were going on in his life that suggested that he might have an Alzheimer's issue as well. And so in order to be able to deal with that and to make sure that Joe's illness didn't impact what was going on with Kathy, they needed to explore something we call elder law preventative planning. And what that really means is they wanted to make sure that their affairs were in order so that if one of them became ill, in this case Joe, that they wouldn't lose everything. So if we think about the problems that they had, their problem was largely exemplified by worrying about whether or not they were going to lose the house. And specifically, they wanted to make sure that no matter what had happened with Joe, if he got sick later in the future, they wanted to make sure that they didn't have to lose the house or lose anything about that. And the risk was that if they didn't do planning ahead of time, what was going to happen was that they would be forced to be dealing with assets in crisis that could potentially jeopardize this home. And again, with Kathy being almost 10 years younger than Joe, they were super concerned about what would happen to her ability to stay in the home and maintain that. Now, there are other reasons to do planning as well, and they include thinking about how to protect a nest egg from Medicaid spend down. So there are some clients that want to make sure that the assets that they have are available to help the other spouse maintain the same quality of life. For instance, if Joe needed to go into the assisted living facility, they wanted to make sure that Kathy had enough money to be able to not only pay for Joe, but maintain her same quality of life. In fact, if it came to the point of them spending all of their assets or not, they wanted to make sure that they were able to safeguard enough assets so that after Joe had passed away, Kathy had enough money to go through her life as well. The other thing they wanted to do was maintain care choice flexibility. And essentially what that means is they wanted to be able to have Joe have the best of care throughout the rest of his days. Like, they didn't want to just be thinking about a nursing home. They want to think about getting care inside of their home, aging in place, and doing the things that would make Joe most comfortable if he was the one to get sick. And in order to be able to do that, they had to do planning ahead of time. There were a couple of other issues as well, and those include, as I mentioned, maintaining quality of life for Kathy as she got older, and maybe as Joe got sick, but that she used money, and at the same time wanted to make sure that there was sufficient money for an inheritance if that was something that they wanted to be able to do. So leaving money behind for the next generation was something that they absolutely wanted to do as part of their planning. Now, the way that they were going to go ahead and doing this was actually in their favor, because Kathy and Joe, since Joe had been in to see us for Joe's mom, were actually ahead of the curve. And that's an important concept, because what it means is that they had time to do the planning. Most individuals, when they go through this, unfortunately, they meet us almost too late in the process. What's happening is that in Joe's case, Joe came to see me about his mom. The only way that we got in front of Kathy and Joe is because we were doing planning for Joe's mom, and Joe wanted to make sure that we didn't have to do this planning for him when he got sick in a crisis. So most people who do any research in this area understand that part of what they want to be able to manage is things ahead of time, getting in front of the problem. And the only way to do this planning with 5 years or more before you get sick. Now, you might be asking yourself, well, what if I don't have 5 years? What if I can't make it that long? Well, I don't know. The crystal ball in my office is broken, unfortunately. But I do know this. It's better that you move forward with some part of the planning before you get sick than deal with it at a crisis. Because the thing about it is, when you go through this ahead of time, you are able to protect the most amount of assets. If you end up waiting for the crisis moment, we're only able to save about half. Now, in Kathy and Joe's situation, we went through exactly the same process as we did before, and that was to follow the roadmap to go through every one of the steps, and most importantly, be able to use the creation of a plan in order to be able to make sure that we have covered all of the assets that we need to. So again, using that checkout plan where we're reviewing your income, your investments, your tax, and your estate planning, that's the only way that we can make this stuff really work when we need it. Here's a perfect example. If most of your income is in one spouse's name because they're the person who has the highest Social Security and a pension, and then I tell you this, which is when they come into a nursing home or a assisted living facility, they have to spend all of their income and the other spouse has nothing. It's important to know who has what amount of income because it helps us figure out how much we have to save. Similarly, when we take a look at your investments, we need to make sure that you have the right configuration to last the rest of your days and that we have the right available to be able to put inside of the buckets for what we're using to protect money. And finally, if we're thinking about tax, the tax laws that we have right now, they're not the tax laws that we're going to have in just 5 years. In 5 years, we're going back to the old numbers. So this is our window to take advantage of lower tax rates. You might have heard that we are running a $3 trillion deficit. Someone's got to pay for that. And that's going to be your partner in retirement, Uncle Sam. So taking advantage of the window to do planning gives us an opportunity to think about everything that you need to have in place in order to have a successful plan. What legal documents do you need to have in place? What financial planning do you have in place? What do we need to do in which order to ensure that you've got the best chance of success going forward? And here's the thing about it. When we get to the end of it, like in Kathy and Joe's situation, what we find is people who have peace of mind that know that if one of them were going to become sick, if Joe, God forbid, ends up getting the Alzheimer's that hit his mom, then they're going to have a plan to make sure that Kathy's life is protected. And by the way, this isn't just planning. That's done for someone who is married. Single people really take advantage of this kind of planning and can benefit from it because there's nobody to help them if they get sick. In fact, one of the things we want to do is make sure that they get as much care and help as possible. As I mentioned, there's really one way to make sure that that happens, and that is to go through the process of scheduling an initial client meeting with us, a welcome call. And the way that you do that is you follow the link on the screen to medinalawgroup.as.me/Susan and get on the calendar of our Director of Business and Client Strategy. By the way, you're going to love Susan when you talk to her. She's the most delightful person that we've ever had the chance to meet, and we're lucky to have her on our team. When you schedule that 15-minute conversation, she's going to welcome you into the client family, and she's going to give you an opportunity to learn a little bit about what it is that we do, but more importantly, spend some time getting to know you and getting to know what it is that you want in the future and what it is that we're able to help you with. If there's a meeting of the minds, we can take the next step, which puts us on the process or the road to putting a great plan together for you. And that's really the goal. At the end of this, your goal is to be able to walk through life with no burdens on your shoulders, with understanding exactly that you have every piece in place, no matter what life deals you. If one of you became sick, or if one of you was to become needing to go to a long-term care facility, or unexpectedly die, that you have a plan that will help you get through those rough times. Make sure that there is a smooth transition from one generation to the next. And if I could say it, make sure that you have a great partner walking this journey with you. Because the thing about it is that this is a very difficult thing to go through. Most people will not have to deal with this more than once or twice. They may deal with it with a spouse. They may deal with it with a partner, with a parent. But one of the things that they know, having gone through a plan that didn't work the way that they wanted to, is that they want to make sure that they absolutely don't do that to the next family. And what they have enjoyed about a relationship with our firm is that we give them the opportunity to get that complete peace of mind. And so if you're interested again in taking the next step with that, what you should do is schedule an appointment with our Director of Business and Client Strategy, Susan Halem. It's a 15-minute call that will get you an opportunity to learn a little bit more about us. And as an added bonus, we're going to give you an opportunity to get a free copy of one of the 5 books that I have published in the area of legal and retirement planning. Whichever book you want is yours, free of charge, and we just want to say thank you. Thank you for staying on to the webinar for 30 minutes here. There's a bit of a digital live presentation. We know that it takes time out of your day to sign up. There are actually a couple people here that I know that have been referred to our office by a valued client of ours, one of our favorites. We want to welcome you to this call as well and encourage you to take that next step. So we're going to conclude for today's presentation. I do want to say sincerely thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you in the office and or on digital presentation like a Zoom call kind of moving forward. And again, if you want to take those next steps, there's the link on the screen, medinalawgroup.as.me/Susan. Schedule your 15-minute consultation, and it will bring you on the path to resting easy at night, knowing you have all your ducks in a row and your nest egg secure. I've been Victor Medina. This has been our digital presentation. Thank you so much, and we'll catch you again soon. Bye-bye.